to stand on to try to reach the fruit. And I'm going to define the fruit as educational opportunity or success. That's equality. You give students the exact same thing, expecting all of them to reach the exact same goals. It's not equity. Equity is saying that tall student who's walking in, who has a stable home life, who has shoes that don't have holes in them, that has electricity at home, that has access to technology, they're walking in and they don't need a lot of additional help. But for that student that's walking in, that short student that's walking in, that may have had their water shut off, or may not have electricity at home for periods of time in order to do their homework, or may not have access to internet at home, what can we do to help that student reach those opportunities and successes? And so that's been the conversation that we've been having as a division within our schools and within our classrooms of how to help those students reach success. And so you'll hear that word a lot in our conversations, and I just wanted to make sure that that definition is clear, that equity is not equality, that it does take additional work to help the students who are most at need and most at risk. And so that's been a driving focus of the school division really ever since Dr. Spence came on board. And last year, we really started seeing that structured as far as how that's applied into the classroom. Do you have anything?
Yeah, well, and I think, and we look at gaps, which can enter this conversation, and we see academic gaps with the African American community, but our biggest gap is actually our special education students. And you talk about extra support, they really need the extra support, the teachers need the extra support. My son was in special education from first grade through college, and so I really always kind of turn to the special education piece because of my experience. And also with this equity, we have to remember too that I personally want to see the person that has everything going for him, the student, or that appears. We can't just assume that because they go to a certain school that everything's okay. And then I want this person that has everything for us to still challenge them so that they can actually reach their potential. And so this doesn't mean that we're, that everybody's going to reach the same, because we have so many students that we're still providing, opportunities for them to even go beyond. Because like we said, accreditation SOLs to me is just a very minimum baseline. And we need to really make sure that our excellent students still have something to strive for, and just don't take it, they go to this school, so they're, everything's fine. And so we always remember that in our conversations as well. So it's just so complex.
Success is individualized.
Yes,
what success looks like for one student doesn't mean the same thing for another student. And one of the ways that we're doing this is a very structured, tiered approach within the division to look at schools and say, this school is performing well, we'll let you guys continue to do what you're doing. You guys seem to be all right. For those struggling schools, what additional resources do you need and supports? And so schools that have been on the edge of accreditation have received a lot of focus by administration. They have continuing meetings, what do you need, resources, et cetera. And those resources, in the past, it used to take a long time to get resources to a school that needed it. Now it happens very quickly. If those regular meetings happen and the principal says, what would really be helpful is if we had, X funding for these materials, like we really need that. Administration, within the confines of her budget, obviously, said we'll try to make sure that they have those resources. And I think that's helped a lot. So that's a tiered approach to schools, but there's a tiered approach within the schools too, looking at individual students, saying this student's doing well, how can we help them do even better? Like what other opportunities are there? But for those students that are struggling, it's almost the same thing. They get pulled out for additional coaching sessions and additional resources applied to them to help them reach that level. We do not reach 100% accreditation by treating every student the same. We do it via this approach and making sure they have the resources they need, and special ed is a big part of that, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm on a regional committee with special education. We just had a meeting Wednesday just to talk about budget. The federal government since, 1975 has been supposed to be funding special education through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And they're supposed to be funding it at 40%. Well, this year they're funding at 15%, but they've never funded more than 18% ever. And so it's just amazing how this happens. And so, and special education is, anytime you individualize the program, it is very expensive. So that falls on the localities in the state. But the federal government really has not done what they're supposed to do with this special population.
Yeah, and more students end up being identified for special education over time, which means that portion that essentially is an unfunded mandate from at the federal level, that portion that state and locality have to pick up grows over time.
Yeah,
so it's one of the driving factors of our cost per pupil is special education funding that never materialized at the federal level. Okay, well, talking about money, okay, I'm sorry,
I
yeah.
should hold it to the end, but you sort of answered it. How do you identify the kids that really need this help? And how do you go about helping them to get
Okay,
them to
I'll answer that since I've been through it for
Yeah.
the last 2 decades.
Absolutely.
It can, a parent or a teacher, anybody can kind of refer a child saying, I think my child is struggling and I don't think it's necessarily developmental, and so then it goes to a special education team. And the team is made up of parent, teachers, administrators, the school psychologists, and so then they go through a period of testing. And then if they find that the child is eligible for special education, then this team will meet again and develop a plan of what this child needs, with the teachers in order to be successful. And accommodations, a child with dyslexia may need more reading time on tests or may need tests read to them. So it can be something like that. It can be, more technology. If a child has dysgraphia and cannot write, they might give that child more access to a computer or printers. It may be as simple as note-taking for a child, or it may be that that child is pulled, all day. We try not to, we try to have the children included into regular classrooms with 2 teachers, a special ed teacher and a general teacher. But that child might be pulled for reading or might be pulled for math and get extra instruction. But it is done by a team and the parents there, and the whole thing is to try to work together and to try to get that child with services as quickly as possible. And then that IEP, individual education plan, will follow that child for 3 years, and that child is reevaluated to see if it continues. My child had one for 12 years, and even in colleges are really doing that now. That they'll keep that IEP and help that child through college. So it's a great thing.
And the process is not too dissimilar for students that aren't necessarily identified as special education. We have response teams at every school that when a student is flagged as someone that needs additional help that may not necessarily be special education, additional resources can be provided them, opportunities, coaching, and subject areas where they're struggling can happen at the school. Sometimes in that process of just getting that student involved in that response team, they get recommended to special education to review to see if they actually need special education services, if this is something that actually falls under that. So whether you're special education or whether you're not, every school has a structure to identify students that have a need and provide an adequate level of resources to help them be successful. All right. Well, in order to, speaking of resources to help be successful, let's talk a little bit about budget. Just as a caveat on this, the superintendent's estimate of needs was given to us 4 days ago. And so the board really hasn't had an in-depth conversation about this yet, so I'm not going to go into what may or may not happen. All I'm really going to share with you is what the superintendent is proposing that we consider. Superintendent's estimate of needs is essentially a budget document that provides us the starting framework. We take that, we look at it, and we say, we disagree with the superintendent on this. We'd rather spend $500,000 here than on what he recommended, and those are conversations that the board will have over workshops, and of course there's opportunities for public input on that too. So for the current operating year, our budget is $754.9 million. Again, we are a very large school system, and that comes with a large price tag. The superintendent's estimate of needs calls for $770.1 million. For those that want to do quick math, that's $15.2 million difference. And so for those that are uncomfortable and maybe not used to thinking in terms of million, that's a 2% increase over the previous year. So I would say that is a modest increase in what we're doing and as far as everything that's happening. What is included in that estimate of needs is reducing class sizes, replacing aging buses and technology, ensuring equitable compensation, phasing in full-day kindergarten, supporting one-to-one technology initiative, reducing reliance on reversion funds, talk about that a little bit more, contributing a pay-go to the CIP. I'm going to apologize for the quality of these slides. The budget doc isn't in digital format for us yet, so I literally went to YouTube from our meeting and pulled the slides that were presented at our school board meeting. Of course, in the past, we've faced some budget difficulties, and so we've had to make some cuts. So just to kind of review those, we've eliminated central office positions, we've cut non-instructional budgets, we've ended specialty programs, we've closed the school, and the one that probably gets the ire of most people is that we raised class sizes. So let's talk about reducing class size. The superintendent's proposing that we add 28 new full-time positions, 8.6 for elementary schools, 4.4 for middle schools, and 15 for high schools. This is the second year of an interesting approach. Prior to last year, in our budget decisions, there were two major drivers on the big ticket items. One was employee compensation. Are we going to be able to give a raise? Are we not going to be able to give a raise? And the other side was class size. And prior to last year, that class size conversation sort of was, how many students overall are we adding or taking away from? So are we adding one student, are we adding half a student? And of course, that equates to either hiring more people or not hiring people. And the price tag for doing that, depending if you're a half a student or a student, swings between $6 and $12 million, which is a significant, when you're looking at $15 million available, that's a significant portion of those funds. So what the superintendent proposed to us last year was to say, what if I went out and found pain points in class sizes? What if I went out and tried to make sure that class sizes weren't above 30, or that teachers weren't carrying student loads of 150 or more, which is actually the cap that the state gives, and proposed additional allocations to help kind of surgically take care of those issues. We said that's an interesting approach. Let's do that, because that freed up some money to do other things. So, and it helped. It did help, but essentially the feedback and the numbers show that we need to kind of do another round of that. So we're taking, for the second year, a more surgical approach to class size reductions, trying to make sure, again, that the individual classes are lower, and then that teacher workload is lower as far as getting them under that 150 student cap. I think that this is a brilliant idea. I appreciate long-term thinking and surgical approaches. And so when Dr. Spence talked about this last year, I was on board, and I'm excited that we are continuing that. You want to share anything on that?
No, but that's what we hear every time I go out and I'm visiting schools the next 2 weeks. I always like to visit them around budget time so I can get some input. But if I ask a teacher, would you rather have a 0.5% more raise or less students, or a 1% more raise? For 20 years, it's been less students, because that makes such an impact on that teacher in that classroom, especially depending on what class. You're an English, 11th grade English teacher and reading all that, And with special education, I just heard a kindergarten teacher call me yesterday saying she had 28 in her class. That's just hard. So low class size is so key to students and teachers, and they would rather see that actually than a little more raise.
And that answer shifts, and a little more raise is probably key.
Well, a little more raise, a larger raise, but when you're talking a 0.5% or percent, they, an extra $30, in their paycheck, they say lower class.
And right now, 0.5% equates to about $2.6 million. And so, so when you're talking about those numbers, but that answer shifts. I mean, if a lot of the answers to that very same question that I asked in the third year of not having any raises was, we need raises. Class size can be on hold. That balance has shifted a little bit. And when we were looking at the non-surgical approach to class size and kind of doing either or for pay versus class size, that became sort of a teeter-totter issue. And it became a political sort of ping pong, because it was, the school board focused on class size one year, then the argument against incumbent school board members that were running next time is, oh, well, they didn't take care of class size, but if they focus on teacher pay, then, it's just kind of just goes back and forth. That's one of the reasons I appreciate that this approach is saying we're trying to make our way on all these issues at once, rather than just a general approach. And so we're doing that. Supporting student success. Additional allocations. One of the things that we've heard for a long time out of high schools is that additional counselor support is needed. And so the superintendent is recommending 12 new high school counselor positions, 10 technology support technicians, and 3 instructional technology specialists. The technology support technicians are non-instructional personnel at the school level to provide really tech support for teachers and administration at that building. As you know, there's a lot more technology flowing in, so taking care of things like updates and troubleshooting and things of that nature, that falls on them. Before, our computer resource specialists that were instructional were handling that sort of things, but that's not really what they should have been doing. They're instructional personnel that are supposed to be helping in instruction. So we really separated out these positions a few years ago to say, okay, we're going to have technology support technicians that are going to focus on the tech support side, and then instructional technology specialists are teachers specially trained in technology that are helping teachers in their building integrate technology for transformational learning in their classrooms. I think this gets us to one-to-one on each of those, so that every school has a technology support technician and every school has an instructional technology specialist. For the last few years, we've been sharing some of these resources between schools, and what we've heard as the use of technology has been growing, that they need someone full-time on-site to handle that. Compensation, that other side of the teeter-totter. What's being recommended by the superintendent is a 1.5% living salary adjustment or cost of living adjustment, a 0.5% step increase for eligible employees. This is a little different than what we've done in previous years. I forget how long it has been since we talked about instituting actual steps between years of experience. Because right now what happens is if you, for example, make $20,000 in year one, and there's a cost of living raise, across the board raise of, let's say, $200, then your year two pay ends up becoming $20,200. You didn't get money for experience, you got money because everyone's pay increased. And that creates compression issues, it creates too many layers at the top of the pay. So what we have asked Human Resources to take a look at is how can we institute back a pay scale that rewards experience, so that there is a guaranteed minimum pay of sorts between steps of experience. And that's what that 0.5% is. So we're trying to institute that. I'm sure we'll have a lively discussion about what that should look like for the entire pay scale. And so the combination of the two is about 2% increase. Fully funding remaining equity adjustments for the unified scale employees. For those not aware of what that is, a number of years ago, administration came to us and said, we have people on the non-instructional, that's what the unified pay scale is, the non-instructional pay scale who are essentially on the same level of the scale, the same years of experience, but are getting paid differently. And we need to correct that. It was a large amount of money to make those corrections, so for a number of years now what we've done is we've attacked that in sort of percentages. And this year we are about $2 million in striking distance of finally finishing that to get everyone equalized on that pay scale. So that's being recommended. And kind of on the other side, a moderate 1% increase in employee premiums for healthcare. Last year we were able to not do any employee premiums. This year it's looking like we're looking at 1%. Additional budget highlights, reducing reliance on reversion funds by $2 million. Unfortunately, so reversion funds are essentially those monies left over at the end of the year after our budget cycle that revert, e.g. reversion, back to City Council. Because they are city funds, and so they revert back to City Council. And what we do every year is adopt a resolution, send it to City Council for their consideration of getting those funds back for specific uses. Prior to the recession, those reversions were pretty significant amounts, double digits, $15, $20 million amounts. And what we were able to do is take those funds and use them for one-time purchases. We were able to make sure our bus replacement cycle was where it needed to be. We put money into the capital improvement program for replacement and modernization of buildings. Since the recession, though, we have faced a budget gap from year to year, and what we've had to do is